my sectional coming to you from the beautiful state of Michigan. It's my privilege to be presenting my new collection of original hymn tunes, We Sing of God, published by Selah Publications. Special thanks to David Scott for his mastery in making this video presentation come to life. We Sing of God is the second collection of my original hymn tunes and continues to be a mirror of my personal growth as a Christian as well as a sacred musician. Many years ago, when I was trying very hard to write unemotional, academically pleasing tunes, my composition professor, Dr. Richard Hillard, looked at me and said, "You have a gift for writing warm and inviting melodies. You should use it." I think that this collection is a good representation of Dr. Hillard's admonition to me. Most of these tunes were written to commemorate various anniversaries, were commissioned by specific individuals or congregations, and some were also written as a response to the grief of friends over the loss of loved ones. Or as in the case of the Christopher Smart text set here, written as a representation of my own literary leanings and curiosities. Ultimately, all of the hymn texts and tunes included here represent my own continuing spiritual journey and are undeniably my own feeble response to an unfathomable God whom is far greater and more loving than any of us can possibly conceive of. I have maintained for some time that there is nothing more difficult to compose than a solid hymn tune. For in a small amount of time and space, you must craft a vehicle for profound theological truths that is relatively easy to grasp, hold on, and wears well over time. That's a lot harder to achieve than one might think. With all of the hymn texts and tunes, the test of time would seem to be the only true measure of the worthiness of these materials. I have tried hard to avoid texts that are so inseparably wed to time and place that they are outdated 10 minutes after they are first sung. I am tremendously grateful for the close working relationship I have had with living writers like Harriet Warnick, Susan Paulo Sherwin, Rick Cody, Timothy Dudley Smith, and the like, as well as the opportunity to plumb the depths of historical writers like Christopher Smart, Martin Luther, Paul Fleming, and John Mason Neal. The fertile ground provided by such keenly talented writers seems to be inexhaustible, and thanks be to God. So with those few introductory openings, I hope you will enjoy this unique sectional. It's a pleasure to be presenting many and most of these hymns as they were conceived for, to be sung by a congregation in a worship setting, and a few that are just in a concert setting in that. So it's my hope that you will enjoy this as we all come together to sing of God. Let all the world in every corner sing. The tune name for this particular text I gave is Linda. 2018 and 2019 was a difficult period of time for me, with the deaths of several dear and deeply treasured friends. One of those friends who died far too young was Linda Schmidt. Linda was a cherished friend, a passionate church musician, and a woman who loved her husband Cliff and her 2 children with every fiber of her being. When I first heard of Linda's untimely death, I knew that I had to respond in some manner. George Herbert's magisterial text, "Let all the world in every corner sing," came immediately to mind. Linda was a gifted choir director and loved singing to the very depths of her soul. The scope and the breadth of Herbert's text is the perfect summation of Linda's all too brief life and work. The St. Lawrence Alma Mater. For the past 21 years, my wife and I have served the congregation of St. Lawrence Lutheran Church in Frankenmuth, Michigan. Our parish school has biannual concerts for its various performing groups, which are generally heavily attended by alumni from our school. As the conductor of the middle school choir, it struck me that we needed to have a school song of sorts, something that could be sung by current students of our school, accompanied by the school band, and joined in by generations of alumni as well. Retired colleague and friend Harriet Warnick provided the text for the St. Lawrence Alma Mater. The Word of God endures forever, sung to the tune Verbum Domini Mane in Aeternum. That's a long tune name. Translated, it means the Word of God endures forever. This text and tune were written for the celebration of the 500th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation at St. Lawrence Lutheran Church in Frankenmuth, Michigan. Harriet Warnick's deeply rich and powerful text provided ample fodder for me to write a tune for this grand celebratory event. We're going to be having an interview with Rusty Edwards. And Rusty, would you please just tell us about yourself? Tell us about your background and your trajectory, because you have a fascinating background from what I've gathered.
I don't know about that, but well, I went to seminary and at Luther Seminary in St. Paul, and I had decided to give up music. I just thought that's, if I was going to be a pastor, that there was no time for music and so forth. And then there was a woman in my Greek class, whose name was Gracia Grindle, and she said she'd written several hymn texts, but no one had written tunes that matched them or worked for them. And so I thought, interesting. So I tried, and we ended up doing quite a few things together, probably about 20 songs together. And I also took a course from her on hymn writing. So that kind of got the dialogue going as well. And then for 30 years, I was a Lutheran pastor, and now I'm retired.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Where was home for you? Where did you grow up?
In Dixon, Illinois.
Oh, is that not Ronald Reagan's home place also?
Right, yeah. Yep, spent my whole childhood there.
Very good. Who are your influences, and why do you write hymns?
Well, I've been thinking about that. I guess my original influences were Gracia Grindle and Herb Brokering, who were both my teachers, and they were the ones that kind of got me into it. That Gracia got me into writing tunes, and then Herb thought I should try some texts as well, which I did. But I would say a better answer for that would be I'm influenced by everyone I've worked with. I've over the past 40 years, I've written with a bunch of different people, and they all have different styles. And so I learned from each one of them. I learned from you.
No.
I love your new tune.
Well, thank you.
It's gorgeous.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm personally
Wake Up and Dream.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm very grateful for that rendition that I shared with you. That's a part of this this program, also done by my buddy Glenn Thomas Rideout. So that's pretty much how I heard it in my head, even though I could not begin to capture it the same way. So,
yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a crazy talented fella.
Wake Up and Dream came from I don't want to say an argument, but a discussion about the dream of Martin Luther King. It was downtown Atlanta at a seminary, and there was a speaker there, and so we started talking about that, and I don't know. That's where it began. Was just from just the energy from that. I just want to thank you for doing this and talking to an old man, and also for writing the tune. That was such a wonderful surprise, and then hearing the recording of it was an additional surprise that I've listened to it many times because it warms my heart, and I just thank you for doing that.
My honor, my pleasure.
To keep going.
Well, thanks. Yeah, that's theoretically the idea, at least.
Right.
So, but again, thank you for spending some time with us today to discussing your hymns and your approach to writing hymns. We appreciate it tremendously. Thank you, Rusty Edwards. Wake Up and Dream, tune name Kibby. In September of 2018, I was asked to present a hymn festival at the First Presbyterian Church in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This hymn festival was part of the University of Michigan's annual organ conference, and I was specifically asked to focus on themes of social justice. Rusty Edwards' brilliant text, Wake Up and Dream, came immediately to my mind, and I created a tune that is intended to be rendered in a gospel style at the piano. The tune is named for one of my teachers, mentors, and very, very dear friends, James Kibby. James is the university organist and professor of music at the University of Michigan. I hope you enjoy this wonderful rendition given by my good friend and colleague, Glenn Thomas Rideout of Wake Up and Dream.
Wake up and dream of days far beyond us. Bring that day near in all that we do. Eyes open wide, come join in the vision. Roll up your sleeves so that dreams can come true. Pray for the one whose dream is a nightmare. Speak for the ones who sleep through the night, that we may dine at one common table. All will be holy and all be right. Wake up and dream for all of the children working for justice, not just us, please. And may we walk can look at characters' content rather than what is different odd. Dignity shower on all those deserving, everyone born in the image of God. Wake up and dream of days far beyond us. Bring that in all that we do. Eyes open wide, come join in the vision. Roll up your sleeves so that dreams can come true.
We're going to have a conversation with Reverend Rick Cody. Pastor Cody is a pastor at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Wichita Falls, Texas. And Rick, it's great to have you here with us today. If you wouldn't mind telling us who you are, what your background is.
All right. As you said, my name is Rick Cody. Been pastoring now for about 25 years. This is my 25th year come this June the 9th. So we celebrate 25 years in the ministry. And this is my fourth parish to be in, on my fourth call now. So I've gone from Texarkana, Texas to Monette, Missouri to Rader, Missouri, and now down to Wichita Falls, Texas. And I've been here just shy of 3 years now. So just loving it every day.
Now, where did you grew up in Texas, did you not?
I did. I grew up in Tomball, Texas at Salem Lutheran Church. And that was kind of my, the beginning of really knowing what church music was. And I would say that that was a very positive experience for me because Salem, because they're a larger congregation, they had the resources to be able to have, you know, one of the best organists available to them. And so that kind of got me into loving, you know, liturgical church music early on. Of course, today their you know, flavor of worship has changed dramatically, but early on it was a very good learning experience for me.
What sort of process do you use when you're writing a hymn?
Well, the first thing that I typically do is I look at if there's an occasion, if there's like an anniversary, whether there's a sermon series for Advent or Lent that I've got coming up, whether there's, you know, the Easter celebration, it's something like that I think of first of all, what do I want to write? And then once I figure out what I want to write and for what kind of celebration it might be, then I go and I pick out the meter. To me, the meter's the most important thing. And in order to settle on a meter, I usually kind of gravitate toward a hymn tune. And so I find a tune with that meter, and then I get that stuck in my head. And then as soon as I have the music in my head, then all of a sudden the writing just pours out. It's the weirdest thing. Yeah. So, but I can't write a tune and say, okay, now here, go write I can't write the lyrics and then say, here, go write a tune to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I have to have something in the back of my head. Yeah. So if I have a familiar tune in my head, then the writing is almost second nature, just comes out. Yeah. So that's kind of my process. That's kind of my process for when I start to write.
But it probably has something to do with, you know, what you were saying as far as your background and the importance. You had a lot of hymnody and church music ingrained in you from an early age, so that, you know, influences how you approach it as far as the writing of the text goes. Can you give us a sense of your theological perspective?
I see hymnody in the church as kind of being the fifth gospel.
Yeah.
And I see music and the hymnody of the church as being the church's sung confession. What I mean by that is that more theology can essentially be learned in 5 stanzas of a hymn than it can in a 20 or 30-minute sermon on any given Sunday.
Yeah. That's a bold statement for a pastor to make.
Well, it is. And honestly, I mean, I think the theology that we learn is more learned in Bible class and catechism instruction and that kind of thing. Whereas, the sermons are just to, explain a text, and sometimes it can be very superficial or whatever the pastor's approach would be. So I see the hymns of the church serving the church as a catechetical teacher. And then I also believe that the hymns of the church should be Christocentric and not anthropomorphic, which means they should be Christ-centered, not man-centered, which means they need to be pointing us to Christ and what he's doing for us, and less about, our service or what we're doing or what we're going to be doing in the future or whatever.
Yeah.
Hymn should also remind us of the objective truths of the gospel and shouldn't focus on my feelings and my actions and so on and so forth. Thank you, Pastor Cody. It was great fun getting some insight into your work as a hymn writer, and I hope that everybody appreciates it. It's a diverse group of people that I'm talking to, and it's fascinating to hear the different approaches to the same task. I mean, to proclaiming the wonders of God and proclaiming everything that God has done for it.
Lord Christ, you are the reason, with the tune of Wichita Falls. St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Wichita Falls, Texas, commissioned this hymn tune from me. The text was written by the parish pastor, the Reverend Rick Cody, for the 125th anniversary of the congregation. The tune was presented to the congregation as part of a program that I played for the parish in honor of their anniversary in October of 2019. Lord, who in pathless wilderness, sung to the tune Forest Bells. This text was written for the centennial of St. Lawrence Lutheran Church in Frankenmuth, Michigan, in 1945. As far as I've been able to discern, this is the oldest of the hymn texts commissioned by St. Lawrence to celebrate milestone anniversaries. The author of the text, the Reverend Emil H. Voss, was a son of the Frankenmuth congregation, and he was asked to write this text in celebration of the congregation's centennial in 1945. Voss's text is rich with imagery specific to St. Lawrence's history, as well as those of a nation emerging from the years associated with the Second World War. Yet it's also a text that could be sung by many congregations at times of thanksgiving and celebration today. The tune, Forest Bells, is named for the 2 original church bells that were transported by the first settlers from Germany to the forests of Michigan. They are referenced by Voss in his text, and the bells are still functional and on display to visitors to examine at our historical plots outside of the church. I should also mention that the tune itself is constructed from the 2 pitches of these bells, which the primary bell is a D flat and the secondary bell is an F. I've moved that all up a full step to make it easier for congregational singing, but those bells are indeed represented in the tune. So I hope you enjoy Lord, who in pathless wilderness, sung to the tune Forest Bells.
answer the most urgently, to answer the most urgently, for souls lost from thy kingdom's fold. Let men of faith and courage bold to leave their fatherland and bring church bells in forest aisles to ring. Thy church, O Lord, in these last days, to thee its ardent praise for thy most gracious providence, so full of glorious evidence, that as the Lord dost rule the destinies of church and Lord, let thy gospel church bells ring throughout our land, and let us bring throughout our land, and let us bring thy truth to souls in their great need. As our ancestral fathers did, that everywhere on land and sea, so sinners may be brought to thee, brought to thee.
Abraham's God and Ours, sung to the tune Bunges. In 1970, St. Lawrence Lutheran Church in Frankenmuth, Michigan celebrated its 125th anniversary. The congregation had asked a son of the congregation, the noted composer and organ designer Paul Bunges, to write a hymn in celebration of the event. In turn, Bunges asked a colleague of his at Concordia Teachers College in River Forest, Illinois, a gentleman by the name of Henry Letterman, to write the text that he would set with the tune. Letterman's text is dense, theologically rich, and well worth singing, but Bunge's tune was difficult for the congregation to embrace. Bunges was a part of a group of Lutheran church musicians in the middle of the 20th century who were trying to write rhythmic chorales using a contemporary tonal vocabulary. The tune was an academic success, but was never warmly embraced by the congregation. As one member of the congregation had shared with me when we were discussing this, he mentioned that the congregation had worked long, hard, and faithfully to try to learn this tune and text, but they never quite got it. 2020 marked the 175th anniversary of St. Lawrence, and as the current cantor of the congregation, I was trying to make use of the 4 hymns that have been commissioned to mark landmark anniversaries of the congregation. With the 125th anniversary hymn, it was readily evident that the tune had to be respectfully let go of. The tune given here is my attempt at making Letterman's poetic words singable. In honor of Dr. Bunges, the tune has been named for him. Abraham's God and Ours, sung to the tune Bunges. The light of Christ reveals God's grace, sung to the tune Forest Light. Harriet Warnick is quite possibly one of my favorite human beings, and a mighty fine hymn writer as well. Thoughtfully written, rich with imagery, and plumbing the depths of theological truths, her texts are always a welcome breath of fresh air and a singularly unique glimpse into the love of God that we don't always see. The Light of Christ Reveals God's Grace is the official 175th anniversary hymn written for St. Lawrence Lutheran Church. Harriet and I were both on edge with the prospect as the congregation's much beloved 150th anniversary hymn, Where the Swallow Makes Her Nest, was written by the esteemed team of Jaroslav Vaida and Karl Schalk. And that is some mighty stiff company to keep up with. The tune name Forest Light is a commentary on how long ago the indelible light of Christ was able to shine forth from the depths of the forests of Michigan, bringing healing and wholeness to generations of people down to our own time, and continues on well into the future. The light of Christ reveals God's grace, sung to the tune Forest Light. For Everyone Born, sung to the tune Gronberg Mon. Written for a hymn festival I presented in Fort Worth, Texas, this text is hands down one of my favorite. A text that calls all people of all races, orientations, ages, and economic status to create an environment where all are equal and welcome at God's table. The tune Gronberg Mon is named for pastors Eric Gronberg and Kendra Mon. Eric is bishop of the Northern Texas Synod of the ELCA, and Kendra is pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Fort Worth, Texas, the congregation that had hosted me for the aforementioned hymn festival. I'm also very proud to say that Eric and Kendi are also treasured family members. Please enjoy For Everyone Born to the tune Gronberg Mon.
For everyone born, a place at the table. For everyone born, clean water and bread, a shelter, a space, a safe place for growing. For everyone born, a star overhead, and God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy. For woman and man, a place at the table, revising the roles, deciding the share, with wisdom and grace, dividing the power. For woman and man, a system that's fair, for gay and for straight, a place at the table, a covenant shared, a welcoming space, a rainbow of race and gender and color, for gay and for straight, the chalice of grace, for young and for old, a place at the table, a voice to be heard, a part in the song, the hands of a child in hands that are wrinkled, for young and for old, the right to belong. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy. For just and unjust, a place at the table, abuser abused with need to forgive, in anger, in hurt, a mindset of mercy, for just and unjust, a new way to live. And God will delight when justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy. For everyone born, a place at the table, to live without fear and simply to be, to work, to speak out, to witness and worship. For everyone born, the right to be free. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy, justice and joy, creators of justice and joy.
Winter Night Gives Birth Today to the tune Sandra Joy. As I have already mentioned, 2019 was a difficult year for me personally with the loss of several dear friends. John Stone was one of them. John spent his career working at the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, where he was a professor of communications, eventually transitioning to a role as a talented and intuitive administrator. John was married to one of my best friends from undergrad days, Sandra. And upon their marriage, I was immediately welcomed into their home and family. We spent many, many wonderful days together. Sadly, John was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer late in 2018 and passed away from complications in June of 2019. His loss has left a huge hole in my life. Sandra Joy is named for Sandra Joy Stone, John Stone's wife. 2018-2019 truly proved themselves to be Job-like years for my dear friend Sandra. Her annus horribilis began with the passing away of her mother in the spring of 2018. Before she could properly grieve the loss of her mother, her husband, John, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and passed away in June of 2019. Sandra was then diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer as her husband was dying. As of 2020, she is doing well, surviving chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, not to mention healing from the loss of her mother and husband. Richard Wiegmann's tender lullaby for the Christ child seemed an appropriate expression of hope to offer Sandra. Winter night gives birth today. May it be so.
Traditions have to begin somewhere, right? Well, we hope to begin a music tradition tonight with a broadcast premiere. Scott Hyslop is the director of parish music at St. Laurence Church in Frankenmuth, whose chamber singers are among tonight's performers. He has composed a work that is about to get its broadcast premiere. Bill had an opportunity to sit down with Scott at St. Laurence Church and learn more about Winter Night Gives Birth Today. Bill?
All right, Scott, what was the inspiration for this piece?
This is a text that was sent to me by a friend out in Portland, Oregon some years ago, and I knew I always wanted to set it. So I used the time that I had during the quarantine to write a setting for a congregational setting for voices and organ. And then when I realized I was going to need another piece for our Christmas concerts, I then expanded it out to be sung by a choir accompanied with string and handbells.
You mentioned quarantine and the pandemic. trying to compose a work in itself has problems. Was this a hindrance or a help this year?
It actually was a benefit because my regular schedule doesn't allow me a lot of time to sit and compose music. But when the quarantine hit, I had nothing but time. So I was able to spend time putting together what I feel is a pretty strong piece.
And the title?
Winter Night Gives Birth to Day.
We praise you, Jesus, at your birth. Gelobet seist du nu. Part of my personal celebration to mark the 500th anniversary of the Lutheran Reformation was to revisit some of the hymns, the texts and tunes that were written by Dr. Martin Luther, many of which are amazing, deep, rich texts, but the tunes have not kept up with the times of the day. Part of my Luther 2017 project was to tackle the great Lutheran Christmas chorale, We Praise You, Jesus, at Your Birth. This hymn is assigned the place of honor as the hymn of the day for Christmas Day in most Lutheran worship planning materials. While I have a great personal fondness for the original Gelobet seist du, mostly due to the organ and choral works of J.S. Bach, it can be a hard sell on Christmas Day to the average parishioner these days. This text and tune were first sung at our Christmas concerts at St. Lawrence Lutheran Church in December of 2017, and has happily taken its place as the hymn of the day at St. Lawrence on Christmas Day since that time. We're here this afternoon with Susan Paulo-Cherwin. And Susan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
I am a poet and writer. I am also a musician. My bachelor's degree is in church music, which I got at Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. I grew up in a Missouri Synod Lutheran congregation in Ashtabula, Ohio, but it was a Finnish congregation. So I grew up hearing Finnish sung in the church, and my very first solo in children's choir was a Finnish Christmas hymn, Kun jouluaamu koittaa. I still remember some of the words, which just shows you how important children's choirs are.
Yes.
Because that was a long time ago now. I'm also just a lover of words.
Yeah.
Many of the words that are most beautiful I don't use because they're Latinate words, and they tend to be more intellectual, more cerebral. They tend to have more syllables, which makes it harder for the musician to set, because the more syllables you have, the more likelihood there is that you're going to have to put a syllable, an unaccented syllable on an accented note in a melody. And so that's one of the problems with Latinate words. The other reason that I tend to gravitate toward Anglo-Saxon words is they're one or two syllables, and they're the stuff of the earth. That we're a religion of the incarnation. Christ came to earth. Christ became human. Christ experienced the rocks and the trees and the clouds. All of those things, those one-syllable words, heart, hearth, rock. Those are the stuff of incarnation. And so I do most often use one or two syllable Anglo-Saxon words rather than the Latinate words. But the Latinate words are often the most euphonious.
Yeah.
Luminescence. What a beautiful word.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a part of me that is always striving for the truth.
Yeah.
Always. If the words that I write are not true, then that is a huge problem for the people of faith who are singing. And so I'm always struggling with what is true, what is excellent, what is beautiful, what is appropriate. I have 7 questions that I ask myself when I'm writing a text. And the very first one is this true?
That's yeah. That's excellent. What that kind of dovetails into my next question is, what is your process of writing a hymn text?
I almost always start with a biblical text. And if I'm writing on a particular theme, I look up biblical texts that have to do with that theme, and I start kind of creating a grid. I always write with pen on a piece of black pen on a piece of college ruled paper. And what's first on the page are any images out of Scripture. Those always guide me. And then I start other images, join them. Sometimes I'll read into theologians or mystics, the Rhineland mystics. Anybody who's looked at the text that I've written would have to recognize that I'm influenced by Teilhard de Chardin,
Mhm.
the French Jesuit. So all of those images start to take shape around the edges of the piece of paper. And then the text begins to take shape in the center. Often the very first line that takes shape is not the opening line of the hymn. It's very often someplace else in the hymn. But that first line that the angels help weave together is the line that will set the meter and the rhyme scheme. And so I always try to write a reliable meter, because hesitation is the death of congregational singing.
Absolutely.
And so if I don't write a text where it's absolutely certain how the words fall into the meter and how the words fall into the melody, then people are going to be afraid of being the soloist. And that just kills congregational singing.
Yeah.
So I try to be very, very consistent when I'm writing a text of how the meter lines up and how the syllables and the accents line up.
It's been a delight chatting with you, and thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for asking me, Scott. I really appreciate it. And then I appreciate all the melodies that you've written for texts that I have written, because without a melody, it's not a hymn. It's just words on a page.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I can't tell you how grateful I've always been for your positive feedback when I send you a tune, because I know that not only am I sending it to the author of the text, but also to a very astute musician as well. So. God has told us, Christ has taught us. Pisti elpida kai agapi, faith, hope, and love. 2016 marked the year that our son Nicholas was confirmed at St. Lawrence Lutheran Church. I felt a strong need to provide a new hymn to mark the occasion, and Susan Paulo-Cherwin obliged my request with this eloquent and powerful text. The tune, Pisti elpida kai agapi, is Greek for faith, hope, and love. Three of the most important gifts that all parents hopefully bless their children with. The video that you're about to see is a product of the global pandemic and quarantine. As you'll easily tell, it's of the Zoom sort of thing, where all of the players are in their own times and own places, playing their parts separately, and it was all pasted together by the young lady who's playing trombone in the video as well. This video was put together for a virtual baccalaureate service, which was held in May of 2020 to honor the graduating seniors from Frankenmuth High School here in Frankenmuth, Michigan. Now, I wouldn't be a good father if I didn't also mention the French horn player that you see there is my son, Nick. So we hope that you'll enjoy this presentation of God has told us, Christ has taught us.
God has taught us, I am
Blessed Feast of Blessed Martyrs, sung to the tune St. Augustine's House. A Lutheran monastery. Who knew that such a place existed? Imagine my surprise when in early spring of 2019, I was invited to play a dedicatory recital and subsequently a hymn festival to celebrate the installation of a new organ at St. Augustine's House, an independent Lutheran monastery in Oxford, Michigan, which is roughly an hour away from where I've lived for the past 21 years. To celebrate such an auspicious occasion as a new organ at such a unique institution dedicated to prayer, I chose to write a new hymn for the 12th century text translated by John Mason Neale, Blessed Feast of Blessed Martyrs. Here you will hear the text paired with a very sweet partita that was written for me by Alfred Fedak. The hymn and the partita were presented at the dedication of this new organ at St. Augustine's House in February of 2020. The vocal soloist is the extraordinary soprano Selah Powell. And I also need to mention that the partita that Al wrote for me is also available through Selah Publications. So with that, please enjoy Blessed Feast of Blessed Martyrs, sung to the tune St. Augustine's House. The final offering from my new collection of hymn tunes that I wish to share with you today is I Sing the Birth That Was Born Tonight, the text by Ben Jonson. My family name, Hyslop, is historically British, coming from England, Ireland, and Scotland. Several generations of my forebears came from Scotland, from the parish of Colvend, specifically the small, very rural community of Hoch of Ur. In the summer of 2018, I had the unique privilege to present a recital with my son and a dear family friend of ours, Catherine McMichael, at the parish church in Hoch of Ur. With several generations of my family in the adjacent graveyard, it was truly a memorable and moving experience. Ben Jonson's hymn for Christmas, I Sing the Birth Was Born Tonight, has long fascinated me. The need for a processional piece for our annual Christmas concert with the memory of our recent trip to Great Britain all fused together in this tune. It only seemed appropriate to name it for the community that so very warmly welcomed us while we were there with them. So thank you for joining me this afternoon in this preview of my new collection, We Sing of God, and I hope that you will enjoy Ben Jonson's text, I Sing the Birth Was Born Tonight, paired with my tune, Hoch of Ur. Thank you very much.